liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.
You're tapped in, so let's get right to it. So there was this festival and event that took place in Columbus, okay? And as a result of that event that took place in Columbus, the NAACP president of that chapter, Sean Walton, I think is his name. This is in Columbus, Ohio. Again, he is the president of that chapter in terms of what the NAACP does and who it represents. Okay, so he got on the stage, on the podium with notable names, Phil Scott, Demetra, co-host of the African Diaspora channel. And oddly enough, the crowd, majority Black, right? Make no doubt about that. He was asked a specific question, and while explaining his stance or, in terms of what he does in terms of the organization NAACP, he decided to instill in that conversation, talking about the NAACP and its sponsoring or its program or advocacy for Blacks. He decided to also instill brown, and he got it. He FAF'd in that respect, and Black people let him know in uncertain terms, no, there's no coalition. There's no coalition. Black first, Black first, Black first. He got the message. However, after the podium piece or what he said in terms of how the audience reacted to what he said, Philip Scott got him, later to the side and had a discussion with him regarding that. And still, he doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. So, of course, I have that clip. I want to share that clip with you. And as a result of this clip, I want to talk about a few things that may be the problem, not just in so-called Black organizations, but the Black community. All right. Now, that being said, before again, I drop this clip, please like, share, follow, comment, and subscribe to TAP. That is the the art of political discourse. We appreciate you guys' participation and your viewership. We also would like to ask again in this month, so let's get them numbers up, them subscribing numbers. Those who sub to this channel, we love to raise those numbers. So we're asking those who are already subscribed, who already like and share, to continue to do so. Continue to pass this channel's message and its content amongst others, in the hopes of bringing them in and getting up those subscriptions. Okay, that being said, let's get to this clip. The NAACP, the National Urban League, these so-called Black organizations are out of touch with the Black community. At the least, that's what I'll say for right now. Without further ado, let's bring this clip in and you guys get the understanding or the gist of what's being said, especially when you listen to this guy, Sean Walton, who is the president of the Columbus, Ohio chapter of the NAACP. Okay, let's go. Well, before we do that, let me also say that, the NAACP and the National Urban League, they expanded their missions to advocate for all marginalized people. All right. Historically, this shift from Black only to everyone is rooted in their multiracial founding. Okay. The universal nature of civil rights laws and the belief that broad civil rights coalitions are most effective. Two things I like to point out and note. One of the problems with a lot of Black organizations is they stuck to this old phrase, civil rights, rather than say and speak to what the issues really are, what they involve and concern are human rights. There's a difference. There's more respectability and accountability, actually, when you apply one over the other, one rather than the other. Civil rights is something that not too many whites in politics or just in everyday life respect, when it comes especially to Black people. But when the term or the phrase is used, human rights, it has a totally different connotation that carries more power with it, rather than civil rights. People, they brush that off like, you guys are complaining again, you want something, you know. When other demographics are talking about rights, they speak of human rights. They do not speak of civil rights. And this is part of the problem also with these so-called Black organizations. Now, that being said, excuse me, the multiracial foundings, both organizations were built on alliances between African American intellectuals and white social reformers. Now, again, the problem, though, is that when you include others outside the demographic, then you are subject to the whims and wants of these outside groups, especially if they're providing funding. If they're providing funding, then half of the say, if not most of it, will come from those who provide the funding. All right, and that's the way it's been with the NAACP, probably as well with the National Urban League. But when we're talking about the NAACP and how it came to be, it should be noted that that organization was founded by a Jewish man and a white woman. All right, that's how it started. That's the truth of the matter. And it started, I think, in 1908, and it wasn't until 1909 that W.E. Du Bois and others were brought in, to be a part of this organization called the NAACP. Now, it also needs to be noted that W. Du Bois did have an organization, a so-called Black organization at that time, and it was called the Niagara Movement. All right, with Ida B. Wells, himself, and one other teller, I think her name was. In any regard or any respect, though, it needs to be noted that, again, when the NAACP started, it did not start with Black people. The concept, the idea of, the initiation of it was not Black involved. It was orchestrated, conceptualized, and orchestrated, brought into being by a Jewish man by the name of Moskowitz, and a white woman whose name I think is Walling. I think it's Walling. No, William Walling was one of the guys, and the female, it could have been Ovington, I think, Mary Ovington. All right, but these three white people, two whites and a Jew or a Jewish guy, started the NAACP. In its conceptualization and its initiation, W.E. Du Bois had nothing to do with it. It wasn't until a year later that he got involved. They went to him because he again had he had his own organization, and it was brought to him and his Niagara Movement, but the funny thing is the Niagara Movement had been started or established 3 years before the concept of conceptualization of the NAACP. So about around 1905, W.E. Du Bois did in fact have an organization called the Niagara Movement. All right, that's a fact, but Walling, Ovington, and Moskowitz, they did start the NAACP, and they figured they wanted to bring, not, they didn't just want to speak up for the Black cause or whatever Blacks were going through at that time. They wanted to bring in Black faces to make that organization more viable, to bring the face of the organization to the organization, if you will. But yeah, that's pretty much how that came to be, and W.E. Du Bois started, I think, a newsletter or a newspaper called The Call, something to that effect. And again, they had to have, there were whites involved in that, because otherwise, Blacks maybe or probably did not have not just the wherewithal, but the resources to start a newspaper on their own and it be viable or already have a base of foundation up under it. So they brought in a white guy, a white publisher by the name of Oswald Dillard, I think his name was. In fact, that probably is his name. But anyway, the call, it started around February 1909, something like that. Um, so my point is, though, the NAACP is not an original Black organization. That's the whole point. And so when you get an understanding of who established it, who created the NAACP, you could kind of understand why then the NAACP involves itself with other demographics, Jewish people and white people, or now brown people, Mexicans, or Hispanics. Again, this thing, it actually speaks for itself if you just sit back and analyze what actually took place, how it took place, and then who was involved as a result of all these actions. You'll come to realize that Blacks had nothing to do in the initial stages of the NAACP. And so as a result of that, I think throughout time and the organization's existence, it has always remained in that effect where Blacks have brought in, brought in, other ethnicities or demographics to somewhat keep the organization viable. Why that is, there are probably any number of reasons or excuses for that, but the fact is, it is not, and it has not ever solely been a Black organization orchestrated and created by Black men and women. Let's get that out of the way. That's out of the way. So let's move on. That's just what it is. Okay. And I use that as an example to try to express why the hierarchy in the NAACP at this day and age still incorporates or finds that it must include Jewish people as well as whites in this organization, because for the most part, most of the donations and sponsorships for the NAACP comes from those sectors. Facts. Okay. That being said, let's jump into this. Okay. This is for context for sure. Okay. And this is courtesy again of the African Diaspora News Channel, Philip Scott's channel. I appreciate this brother. He's very informed, very informed. I like how he goes about doing his thing. He is unapologetic about his expression in terms of us as a community, us as a Black nation. He also stands on the issue of delineation. He may also push and or support FBA. Not something I'm a fan of. All these labels and things that we find ourselves having, to express inadequately, who we are or our identity does not help the situation we're in. So that being said, I'm gonna move on. Okay, and this is again courtesy African Diaspora News Channel. All right.
Have the numbers, what we can have is that solidarity, because our cause is our cause. So we all know that we want to be able to eat. We should all be able to eat, to flourish, to be able to be happy in this city. And so whatever that looks like to you is what needs to be communicated to the powers that be.
Solidarity with whom? Could you describe who need to be in solidarity with? I'm confused.
For me, that's Black and brown people throughout the city.
That's the problem. That's the problem. See, now we as a people, we don't have our shit together. We don't have it together. And yet we always tend to think that in order for us to get it together, we need the support and solidarity of other demographics to get done what we need to do. This is the mindset. This is the mindset of a lot of our people. And it is erroneous. It is not the right mindset to have.
Well, I'm not sure the issue is there. If it's a numbers game.
See, now, also what that means then is this guy, Sean Walton, who is the president of the Columbus, Ohio chapter of the NAACP, is out of touch with the people, with Black people. With Black people, he's out of touch. And that, that in and of itself should send, those should be red flags. right there. Here's another politician. He's a lawyer, and you can bet your bottom dollar in another year or two he'll be pushing for political office. So you have to acknowledge, you have to, consider at the very least that he rubs elbows with those who donate to the NAACP. Those who donate to the NAACP has to have a say in that curriculum. These are facts. No one's going to give you their money and not have say in it. Tax write-off or not. Hey, well, what about? Well, I need you to think about bringing in and da. It's part of King's problem. Him and Abernathy. They allowed the government to persuade them, coerce them, or whatever the case was or had been, to bring in other demographics, Jewish, white, and all that, and into or involved with the March on Washington, which was supposed to be a march that was exclusively done for the sake of the Black population here in America. So we see the remnants of that 2026 still existing. They still exist, and that is not a good look. All right, that is not something we want to be associating with, because again, a lot of us think that in order, one second, please. Yeah, in order for us to get it together, there needs to be only Black involvement. Blacks need to get their thing together before they want to collude or go join with or be in solidarity with other demographics. We want to have our stuff together before we do that, because there still runs the risk, or the risk still exists, that whatever we choose to do or want to do for Blacks first will get co-opted, and before you know it, the whole mission statement is about something other than what it started out as. All right, but there that is. This is Sean Walton, president of the NAACP in Columbus, Ohio, speaking. Listen, he's all over the place.
Ready? All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you have seen the panel, and our brother here said one statement, and boy, the crowd erupted at that point. So our brother Sean here, like, listen, I'm saying what I said to him on the panel, and that way I get him to respond. We are in a different dispensation of time, and it wasn't more so that because nobody know who you are, right? But it more so saw the organization, and unfortunately, you kind of caught a lot of strays. Yeah. So tell people about your history, because some people come to your defense. It was like, man, hold on, y'all know, dude. So let people know who you are, what you've done for the community, because like I said, that way people know exactly what you got going on.
100%, man. So I'm an attorney here in the city. Past 15 years, practicing wrongful death cases, civil rights cases, police misconduct cases. I fight for the people. And I fight for the people within systems that are not built for us, that have been historically racist.
Okay, now just on the face of it already, if you listen to what he's saying, he's an attorney. So in due time, for 15 years been an attorney, and the cases he fight are litigation type cases, what they call civil right cases, civil right violations, rather than constitutional or human rights violations. You can see where, if you think about it, where his career is headed. He seems like a fairly young guy. It should be, I don't have to assume or make the assumption that at some point in his career, it will veer towards or into politics. And in order for that to happen, you have to establish connections. You have to establish acquaintances, associations, things of that nature to get your foot in the door. All right. It's going to call for a lot of networking, with people other than, the Black nation, so that is, just keep in mind what he's saying.
Historically anti-Black. And so I am very much for the people. I don't know how to be any other way. With that, I have secured indictments against police officers. I actually have just secured a conviction against a police officer with no cameras and no witnesses, the first time in history. So I fought an uphill battle, man, and I've recently become president of the Columbus NAACP. And I know what I'm getting into in terms of the history behind that. What I look forward to is that, in Columbus, I have a sense of the pulse of the city and how we can move forward with a agenda that is pro-Black, that's supported by other people, but that is pro-black, black-centered, black-led, all about black people.
See, yeah, that's supported by other people. Therein lies the problem. See, this is the mindset of a lot of our so-called professionals or so-called leaders. And he is the leader of the chapter of the NAACP in Columbus, Ohio. That's the mindset. That's the problem. You know, having a mindset that in order for us to do anything, to get anywhere, we have to be in collaboration or receive the support from people outside of the demographic. That's the problem. And again, I think just listen to him. I listened to this before I played it, listen to the guy. Automatically, I see that he's out of touch with the black community.
And do it in a way that builds our own power. And we need within this system.
Do it the way they do. You cannot do it in a way where we have our own power, but you are including other demographics. It's no longer our power. It's diluted, you know. The agenda becomes diluted, you know, the script, you know, the curriculum becomes diluted. And if that's the case, then it's not being done through us and our power, you know.
System, right? The system is never going to work for us. It's not built for us. We're seeing that now more than ever. But we have an opportunity to build our own system of blackness. And that's what I see the NAACP being here in Columbus, is that chance to have, committees focused on, black economic development, and to do so in a way that both explores policy as well as how to make the system work for us in these ways, because we have that inside knowledge.
See, he just double spoke. He just said initially that the system is not built for us. It does not work for us. Then he comes around in the same breath and says, we got to do it in a way to make the system work for us. You can't have it both ways. I'm an advocate that I advocate that blacks need to separate from this system, you know, in the United States, politically and financially, you know. There's that, you know, to be a part or continue to involve ourselves in capitalism as well as the political process surrounding it, then we cannot expect to come out of this situation. We'll always be in this situation. And then so I'm asked, well, so then what do we do? You know, what do we do is we support ourselves. You know, we go and find that or those donors who look like us, who resemble us, those sponsors who have our best interests at heart. And we say, this is our figure. This is what we need to establish A, B, and C. A would 1 be land, or where we decide we'll be, or where we'll start to reside as a people, away from the system that we know has oppressed us for hundreds of years. That's 1, location. 2, how do we produce for us? Food, water, food, clothes, shelter. How do we do that? You know, how do we go about doing that? Do we include others? Do we entrust others to supply us with those essentials that we'll need to take care of ourselves, to be autonomous? We can't. If we have to depend on anyone to provide any of those provisions, food, clothes, or shelter, then we're still dependent. We're not autonomous. So number 2 would be establishing production, manufacturing that deals and caters specifically to us. We learn our independence that way. The 3rd would be, once that's done, we acquire the land, then we establish productivity, we manufacture our things, we build plants, you know, those types of things. The 3rd would be then to have the people in such a situation where they understand that the generation or the generating of finances and funds stay within the community. They stay within the community, you know. And if we do with any business in terms of importing anything to us, we want to do that, or we want to establish that connection with people, trusted sources of people who look exactly like us. You know, we understand what their methods are, what they use in terms of the product that they create or grow is done naturally, organically. We want to align ourselves with the Caribbean Isles. You know, we want to make contact with Africa, you know, continents, you know, countries on that continent that do their own thing, that are becoming more and more every day autonomous, as well as independent and sovereign from any influence outside of itself. That would be the three things or the three steps we should take in terms of becoming autonomous and being independent from a system that he himself has said is not for us. And yet he just said, well, to make it for us. And I kind of want to rewind that so you guys can catch that part. I'm going
to focus on, Black economic development, and to do so in a way that both explores policy as well as how to make the system work for us in these ways, because we have that inside knowledge and the outside pressure. And so I'm trying to bring a unique, I say revolutionary approach to it. And that's who I am, what I'm about. And folks in the city know I'm about that, and around the state. So I get, like I said, I on stage I was saying, I understand what everybody's saying. I'm not saying that. I was just hoping that, they could see beyond the word to get what I was saying, as opposed to thinking that it was a fight against me, as opposed to me, being on the same team.
No, I didn't get what he was saying, because it didn't sound like I was confused or I didn't comprehend what he was saying. I heard exactly what he said. And again, most of these guys and some of our women think the same way. It is not necessarily because they believe in it, but more so because that is policy in terms of the spheres, or, the work areas, the areas they work in and, conduct their business in. A lot of them actually not just believe, but live with the fact or the understanding that in order for anything to happen to be accomplished by us as a people, we have to rub elbows and do service, or provide services or receive services from outside the demographic. And that's not true.
Right. So you say it on the stage. I want to make
watch Philip Scott though when he's talking also. Crazy.
Sure, he said on the stage that he wants to change the NAACP, at least this chapter, from within. So can you give me at least 2 or 3 things you say, I'm going to do this to change from within?
Yeah. So number one, changing the culture of the city and working together, right? So for each committee, I have co-chairs that are intergenerational. So I have somebody older that may be a bit more established, somebody younger that's up and coming, male, female, everybody's Black. And so, but it's subject matter experts. And then on the committees, pulling in folks that have experience both inside the system and outside the system, right? Bringing us all together in a way that builds that coalition of Blackness. And that's first and foremost, and building our collective power. And that to me is the thing that, really helps us develop. And then beyond that, establishing a system for us, like I said, that builds power. So within that, the people will then set the agenda. I'm not trying to set the agenda for labor and industry, for example. I think there's some things that we should focus on, like AI. We have to have an AI literacy for Black people, or else we'll get left behind. But within that, I want to defer and put people together that are experts in these areas of Black Columbus, for example, right here in Columbus, Black Columbus, put them together and watch that power build. Those are a couple things right there. And then tangibly, Black businesses flourishing, the public school system for Black people working, supporting that with pro-Black literacy for Black kids, to counter their fight against critical race theory, as they call it. So basically, man, just standing up Black people. And I'm in a space where I have established myself in all these different rooms, and nobody questions who I am or what I'm about.
There you go. Nobody questions what he is or what he's about. Who is he talking about? He said he's established. He's new into the seat or the position of president, first off, of the NAACP's president role or the president's role. He's just really getting in there. It was sometime this year, maybe a month or 2 ago, fairly new. But already I get the impression that he's sending out his fillers to other demographics and saying, hey, we're open to dialogue. We need to unite and work together in all things. Let's do this, while at the same time he's telling us it's about Blackness. We're going to get this together. It's going to be us doing this. We're going to separate from the system, though. We're going to need the system, to build and grow and make it work for us. All over the place, sort of like a word salad.
But with that, I'm hoping that we can show our power collectively, like we have not had before. The opportunity, and within the branch, I'm operating within the bylaws and the Constitution. We're pushing it to the limit. So whatever the national platform is, I respect it. But here in Columbus, we need what we need for Black people, and I want this organization, to be a tool for Black people, as opposed to it being one that Black folks feel used by.
Well, and this has nothing to do with you,
Yeah, for sure.
but who funds anything, control it. Let me use myself for my example. who fund me is black people. So I'm beholden to black people. But it has nothing to do with you. But your organization is funded by many people outside the black community, and whoever fund has a say so. So how do you are going to implement certain changes when the funding of your overall organization may be standing against you at times?
Yeah, no, and that's a real question, and that's real, and I like real questions. And so I've had a black law firm in the city for 15 years, fighting the system, still able to eat because I'm beholden to the people, not to anybody paying me that money. And I get paid when I win a case, and I win for black people. Everybody wins. So I take that mentality into everything I do. I have a black social club in the city, community space, community hub that I use to build blackness. And so as far as the money goes, we can raise money in ways that aren't necessarily a corporation or anything like that. And the fact of the matter is, we have to hold them accountable to donating and to giving that money without expecting anything. And so you asking that question.
That's unrealistic. That is unrealistic. No one's going to give you their money and not expect anything back. And irrespective of the fact that most money that is donated or the sponsoring or the sponsorship you get from, let's say, corporations or individual donors, they still write it off as a tax. It's written off as a tax write-off. You know, there's that. They're going to get the money back. But don't think that because they give you money, they're not going to expect something in return. That's not the way it works. He should know this. He's a lawyer. He's a lawyer and a civil rights lawyer to boot. You know, he should know this.
And for me, it's funny because it's not even an option that we are beholden to anybody else's interest in that way. I get it that nationally or whatever, there's a perception that, you know, money controls things, and it's rightfully so. Nobody controls me. I don't owe anybody anything. I've moved in.
Again, that's you, though. That's Sean Walton. You know, Sean Walton. Okay, but the organization, and Philip Scott was very precise in what he said. He was spot on. You, okay, you may not, but the organization that you represent does things a different way. How are you going to deal with that? And he hasn't answered it yet, you know, because there are bylines. There are certain rules, guidelines he have to follow. And he still hasn't addressed that.
This way, beholden to the people, and that's how I'm going to operate my entire life. And so we're going to figure it out. And if we got to operate in a way where we don't have as much money as another branch because we aren't taking somebody's money to expect something, that's what it is. I mean, people develop power within ourselves. I don't care about a donor. I care about having 50 people as opposed to, $50,000. Like we'll find the power within what we're doing together as opposed to the money.
And if y'all have watched, I told our brother here because he just stepped in this position, right? And some things that he said where that people kind of erupted about. At one point in time, I thought the same way like you. I said the exact same words you said. Until later, I realized that just wasn't going to work. And so we had different stages, and that's okay. So that's why I had said to you, I said, give you 12 months because it takes time. You can't do it. You say, I can do it in 2. No. Give you at least a year to try to implement your policies. And then we could revisit. And then, because my thing is, I always want to give black people a fair chance, right? Not just because we disagree on something, just throw you away. No, give you a chance. And then, so that's why I'm telling everybody, give the brother a chance in Columbus. But like I said, after a year, then do an audit, and then we say, okay, all right, brother, now we gave you a chance.
And I think that we all have different tactics, different strategies. But if we have the same end game in mind, we're gonna figure out how we get there. And I think every city throughout the country is gonna have a different approach based on the history in the city, the dynamics and everything. And so when I was speaking to the Columbus dynamic. It doesn't change.
And they didn't agree. He was speaking to the Columbus delegation, demographic. He said that blacks and browns have to find a way to work together, and they immediately erupted. The majority audience is black. So again, he's out of touch. They don't agree with him. And I can already see a problem ensuing as a result of his mindset, not the people's. The people's are spot on. And that's just not in Columbus, Ohio. That's all over the country. Black communities are saying, all right, you know what? It's just us. It's just us. We have to get ours together. We don't have to align ourselves with anyone. We don't need any strategic alliances with any demographic or ethnicity outside of the black nation. We're going to work with what we got. All we have is us. And this is what communities and cities and states all over this country where blacks are, this is what they're saying. And yet, see, like a politician, he's not hearing that. He's out of touch. He's out of touch.
Change anything. It's still a very pro-black agenda. But if I knew that that folks didn't know me in that way, I would just kept it black because that's really what it is. But I want brown people to support us.
You're being disingenuous. If that's what it is, being black, because that's really what it is, then you would have knew you're being honest with yourself, and therefore you're going to be honest with the people. And you're going to say, hey man, we as black people have to get it together. You're not going to instill or throw in, brown as well, as though brown and black, or us without brown, we can't get nothing done, So that's not really what it is. And you're really setting yourself up. You're exposing, really who you are, truthfully. Like Philip Scott said, not like Philip Scott said, Philip Scott told him, hey, I used to think that way also, but then I began to observe and learn. And I don't think that no way anymore. I don't think that way anymore. I understand that it's just us. Unlike Philip Scott and his brother here, I've never thought like that. And most of the people I know do not think like that. There are some. I've lost a friendship or two behind that, but I think that in order for us to get ours together as a people, there's only us to do that. There's only us. We don't need to network. We don't need to align ourselves with anyone or work with anyone. No one's listening to us to begin with. No one respects us, No one appreciates us. So it's a waste of our time. It's a waste for us to dispense what we know and how we go about things upon others, or look to others to help prop us up. We've been doing this by ourselves for a long, long time. There's no need for anyone else. And again, we have to get ours together before we, want to bring in anybody else to, go to another level or whatever, And
if they don't, they don't. It'll still be what it is. But I think that, they'll understand that, if we can all rise together, their issues will be supported, in time in their different way.
See, he's still saying it. If we rise together, he's still saying it. This is the mindset of a lot of our people.
Our black agenda is our black agenda. It'll be that, regardless of who supports us. I think in Columbus, there's opportunity for allies that do align with our vision to support us without co-opting the vision, but supporting what we're doing in our black-led agenda.
Let me tell you what I said on my platform. I'm not against allies, but I don't support collective groups. In other words, you can be of any community as an individual, and you ride with us, we ride with you. But I don't do wholesale collective support. And let me tell you why. Because if you look at the exit polls of every presidential election, whatever, you can see how people's political ideology align. And a lot of their ideology do not align with me and you. So that's why when people reacted that way, is you dealing with more of a crowd that do a lot of exit poll reading. They study a lot. So certain things they know political agendas is boom. So like I said, it's not about you personally, and I'm gonna keep telling you that. It's just about what's the current mission.
Yeah, and I get that. Yeah, and I just want people to know that, even for me, it's the same mission. It's just I'm trying to speak more positively to the brown people that do align with us, knowing that a lot of them don't.
It's not the same mission then, man. And you are in your way. Your mindset, you want to instill how you think into how the black community functions. This is your idea. This is what you want to do. And that's going to create a problem. I see problems coming as a result of him being president of NAACP there in Columbus, Ohio. Not only that, I see membership falling. People saying, you know what, we're not on the same page. You're out of touch. And as a result, they're not going to support that organization. And that organization, more than likely, will start to support and be about brown people, red, yellow people, rather than blacks. And again, it didn't start with blacks. The NAACP didn't start as a black idea, a concept.
Just trying to, man, just say, hey, look, like you said, what you said, that we can support y'all, can support us, but not a collective thing. This is NAACP and it's for black people. And to black people, I say that. And when I want to, get some brown people to support us, I may say black and brown, but, it's just, I think, like I said, a different audience, different setting. And I get why that was triggered in that setting. I don't dismiss that whatsoever. I just don't want it to change my message. My message is the same. And that's
Yeah,
all, man. It's just
he's all over the place. 1 minute he's this, 1 minute he's that. Yeah. Not gonna.
I get it. Like, we are rightfully triggered by certain things, but we think the same thing. Like, it just, that's all.
Well, before I wrap up, I want you to do me a favor.
Yes, sir.
I want you to meet with the LULAC chapter. Okay, that's in Columbus. Do they have a LULAC chapter in Columbus?
I've heard of one in Columbus.
Okay, find the closest LULAC chapter. I want to see if you can sit down with them and see if you guys align. Because if LULAC cannot align with you and fight for the issues, because historically, LULAC said, I don't want to ally with them. Their problems is their problems, okay? So I would believe it when I see LULAC start partnering, right? They're the largest Latino civil rights organization, right? And I'm not against Latinos fighting for Latino rights. They should. But just like we should be fighting for Black American rights, FBA rights, okay? So that's all I'm saying to you.
Yeah, for sure. And when I say I want them to fight for Black rights, like, not us fighting for their rights. I want them to see our agenda, fight for our rights, knowing that as we win, they can win too on their agenda, just showing that, we can support each other within that. That's all. But it's still very much our issues, our focus.
Yeah,
and just trying to see how we can, support each other.
So I think, again, so when we're talking about the so-called leaders in our communities from organizations, whatever walk of life they come from, the fact of the matter is that most of our leaders, so-called leaders, are out of touch with the people. They're out of touch with the people. Most of them don't live in the areas that go through the things that we see daily on the news or social media. None of them, very few, if any. All right. But the fact of the matter is, when you have an individual like that, and throughout the conversation, he's been defensive, because, that's what it shows that, he's being called on something and he know the nail is hitting the head. The hammer is hitting the nail on the head. You know what I mean? He realizes this, and he's trying to find a way to defend indefensible, mindsets and actions. Again, I guarantee, because what he said, it doesn't jive. It just kept going all over the place. But I guarantee that most of what he said in terms of trying to convince us that he's about the people, his actions are not the same. I'll bet $1 to a donut on that. And that seems to be the problem in the community with most of our Black brothers and sisters. They get out and they become involved in these things. It might start from their career, being a lawyer, again, from that lawyer position, politics is always in that mindset, in that career, that vein. Politics will follow, he'll become a professional politician. And by the time he reaches wherever he decides or he desires to be in politics, he'll be able to go back and say, hey, man, I was about this. I was about everybody, so I'm your best bet, that. So I get what he's doing. And most of us, again, when we notice, disingenuousness, a person being disingenuous, we're supposed to call him on it. I'm calling him on it. Sean Walton is not the community should be aware of him. I don't care how many so-called civil rights cases, police abuse cases, things of that nature he's fought. To him, it's just probably, like I said, an inroad. One, it might provide him a nice livelihood. Two, it also will provide him connections. He's able to network, rub elbows with certain people, so that three, when he comes or decides it's time for him to go into politics, he will already have established those connections. And he'll be able to say, look back on my record. I was about everybody, not just Black people. I'm not going to do nothing for Black people if I can't do it for everybody. Isn't that the mantra nowadays? Isn't that what our politicians are saying? Do your research from Kamala on down. Hakeem Jeffrey, Cory Booker, Gregory Meeks, all of them. They all said, I'm not going to do nothing, if it can't be done for everybody. I'm not going to do nothing for Blacks if I can't do it for everybody. Most of them won't even support reparations because reparations won't support everybody. Everybody won't get them. So most of them won't support them. Right. Tell us what you think about this piece right here. I found it very interesting in that, again, Most of our so-called leaders who are in positions or in careers that would identify or signify them as so-called leaders, they tend to play a dual role. They straddle the fence, you know, and they do it for political reasons. You know what I mean? A lot of them are very careful and mindful of what they say, so that when their time comes to go into politics, an opponent can say, well, you are a black nationalist, so you're not going to do nothing for the people as city councilman, you know, as assembly person, as a congressman or a senator. No, no, no. As mayor, no, no, no. Your interests are only with the blacks. So they're very mindful of this. And this is why you see him speaking that way. If he was really about the people, like he allowed himself to say in that interview, he just stuck to his gun, say, I'm about blackness. I'm about understanding that in order for us to be in the position we need to be in, we have to work within the black collective to get there. And this is our fight, no one else's. It would be the same as us telling Hispanics, Latinos and Mexicans, hey, or any other immigrant who's going through what they're going through with ICE and DHS, hey, that's your fight. You know, that's something you have to battle with and against or for, you know. And once you guys get it established that, hey, and then, you know, this is the thing about black people, we'll know now, okay, they need some help now, you know, and without asking, we'll assist. That's where it should be with us. And those who are supposed to be our leaders, they're supposed to be able to speak truth to power and not cower behind, you know, those issues or circumstances that they feel would ruin their careers if they spoke truth to power about the black community or the black nation. So tell us what you think about that. All right. Drop it in the comments. We love to hear your thoughts. We will answer each and every comment. Again, this is Tapped. You have been tapped in. Take care of yourselves and one another.
You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder a revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom